Fish is very delicate, so when we handle it, we have to remember we can't just treat it like a piece of red meat or a big pork loin. Our muscle fibers are very short. They're referred to as myotomes, and as opposed to red meat, their length makes them much more tender. Right? So if you have a long pork loin and it's 3 feet long, your muscle fibers are 3 feet long. A fish fiber, most of you have had a piece of fish on a plate. When you break it apart and it flakes, that's exactly how long the muscle fiber is, so very short. Those blocks of muscle fibers are held together by connective tissue we refer to as myocomata or myosepta. Super flexible when a fish is alive. It can bend, it can flip, it can jump. It'll flap on a dock if you were to catch it. But the second it dies, it starts to break down. And then when you go to cook it, it dissolves. That's why a piece of fish can sit on your plate and you can literally flake it apart, flake by flake. You'll see on the next slide, I won't speak over it, but take a good look. You're going to see the gray representing the myotomes and the black representing the myocomata. Here we have a diagram of a fish. The gray represents the myotomes or the flakes. The black lines represent the myocomata or myosepta. Those are where the pieces will normally flake apart. Down below, you see what's called a steak. That's a cross-cut section of a fish. You'll notice there's two of them. You might see the little spine in between both of the parts. The one on the front side, that's got the belly cavity, and the one on the back is just a solid piece of meat that's behind the cavity, so that's why they look different. That could be a smart thing to put on your menu. Maybe it won't. Can someone cook it and make it stay even? That's a question only you'll be able to tell after some practice. When we buy fish and we have to store them in our walk-in, we can do it in two different fashions. First, we have to identify if it's a round fish or a flat fish. Round fish are what most people think of as a fish. They have eyes on both sides of their head and they swim upright. Flat fish like flounder, soles, and halibut have two eyes on the same side of their head, and I'm going to show you on the next slide in a series of pictures the proper way to store them. As you can see, in the top left, we have a round fish. We have a hybrid striped bass that's been gutted. Its cavity is packed with ice. We have to keep our fish at 28 to 32 degrees, and the best way to do that is going to be with chipped, flaked, or crushed ice. So we're going to pack the cavity. In the top right, you'll notice they're swimming upright at a 90-degree angle, and then in that middle picture, they're covered with ice over the top of them. That walk-in is at the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York. If you don't have a walk-in like that, maybe you choose to go the route of the bottom pictures. There we have a perforated pan with the same hybrid striped bass, bellies packed with ice, and covered over the top. Please make certain if you use a perforated pan that you got a deep pan underneath it to catch the melt water. In the bottom right, you'll notice a cooler that's got a spout on the bottom right-hand corner. Health department's fine with you using that. Same principles, pack it, stuff it, cover it, but open that drain vent so all the water can come down and go out your floor drain in the cooler. If you do have flat fish, they generally do not get packed in the stomach cavity, and you'll notice they have a dark side and a light side. Make a ramp, like a slope of ice in your walk-in, and put them pigmented side down in the ice at a roughly 45-degree angle so the water can sheet off of them. Then cover them with ice. Sometimes restaurants buy live shellfish, whether they be crabs, lobsters, clams, mussels, oysters, or scallops. In order to keep these fish alive, especially if it's a crustacean, you might want to have a tank. That tank needs to be aerated. The water needs to be in movement. We need bubbles. The fish do need to breathe, and we can't have it stagnate. Do not just put fish in a bucket of water. Also, very important, and it's highlighted or capitalized, the temperature. Temperature needs to be precisely monitored and regulated to where the fish is from, because fish don't handle stress well and they'll die. Lastly, the pH or the salt balance needs to match the fish's home. So on the top left, you see a tank with a bunch of Maine lobsters. That water is the same temperature and pH as the sea from which they came out of. If you don't have the resources to have a tank like that, you could always use perforated pans like you saw earlier, and then instead of using ice, just keep them covered with something disposable like damp seaweed, straw, hay, or even paper towels. You want to keep them damp because that moisture will help them stay alive longer. When you buy, handle, or cut fish, it's a good idea to know its anatomy. When we have fabrication later on in the course, I will be naming fins by their particular names to help guide you in knife placement. Just so you know, you will hear me use the word dorsal many times. Dorsal fin is what we consider to be the fin on the top of the fish. Those bones go all the way through the fish. That's literally the halfway place or center line of the species. The bones go all the way down to the spine. That can be one long continuous one like the picture. There can be one small one. There can be two. There can be three. They can be multiple shapes and sizes, but they'll always be on the center. They'll always be on the top, whether it's a round fish on the left or the flat fish on the top right. It'll be opposite side of the gut cavity. On the underside, the bones that go all the way through to the spine are in the anal fin. So you can see a small one on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, there's a long continuous anal fin. And if you trace those bones, they go all the way through. They will also be on the center, marking the halfway point of the one fillet from the other, or the middle of the fish. Split it symmetrical. If you go all the way to the back, their tail fin is commonly referred to as the caudal fin. Now, most fish will only have one, and it will be on the center. Just like our tailbone is an extension of our spine, so is theirs. The ones that are slightly more confusing for people are the pectoral and pelvics. But if you were a fish, your gills would be in your neck, and your next major muscle group down is the pectoralis major. So if you think about that, a fish's gills are right behind its head, and its quote-unquote neck. The next fin right behind it on each side, one on each side, would be its pectoral fin. And lower down, just like if you were to trace your hands down your body to where your hips are, your pelvic bones, their pelvic fins are on each side of their body, and there's one on each side.